Greetings and salutations, unfortunately for you. I'm back with another video, and I'm going to be answering a few questions today, and really kind of like illustrating certain points about concealed carry, and like basically showing with examples that I personally own and use quite frequently on a daily basis. So, first and foremost, somebody wanted to one of the comments, and I promise, by the way, that I'll get back to the RPG stuff, the role playing game stuff soon. I promise. I'm not abandoning it. I promise you. Again, I just feel very strongly about this subject, and I'm just trying to help educate people. And look, I'm not an expert. There are more expert, masterful, more tactical people out online than me. I'm just your normal, everyday, average Joe. I'm just a little hillbilly with my ammo and my guns out in the woods somewhere. So don't worry about me. But I'm just more trying to help those who know nothing. So and using my real world experience. So, so first and foremost, somebody said, "Well, I want one because this came back from a conversation. I want one, but I just want it to like scare a potential threat." And I'm telling you right now that if you're coming about it with that mindset, as pro 2A as I am, you shouldn't be getting a gun then. Because I say this with all seriousness. The only time, with the exception of this video, the only time that my concealed carry weapons, and I'm specifically talking about concealed carry, we're not going to be talking about rifles or carbines or anything like that today. The only time that my handguns ever leave their holster is to be deployed in shooting, whether that's target shooting, um, dispatching an animal, or a defense scenario. They are not being pulled out of the holster to show off. They are not being pulled out of the holster to maim. They're not being pulled out of the holster to intimidate. The purpose is to defend myself and my loved ones and my property. And they are going to do that. And if it means the death of the aggressor, so be it. You have to get over that. If you're that conscientious about it, you need to probably look into more non-lethal situations. Because I'm just saying, consider this: in most states, if you're pulling a firearm to scare somebody, you a lot of states define that as brandishing, and that is punishable. It could mean the revocation of your concealed carry license if you have one. It could even mean the restriction of your Second Amendment rights in more extreme cases. And I always hated the idea of a warning shot. Never give a warning shot. That's such a stupid thing. You're announcing now. And for people who are not, let's say, some bystanders that might happen to be in this situation, and they hear a gunshot, but they see somebody running away from the gunshot, and you are deploying it in what you thought was a defensive manner, you are now interpreted as the threat. And if the person perceiving that sees that, they are probably going to deploy their options, but they're not going to give a warning shot. It is one of the stupidest things I can honestly think of, to pop off a warning shot. Because at this point, if you're going to shoot, hit what you're going to be aiming for. Because you don't know, that round that you're popping off as a warning shot could ricochet off of something. There could be something in the ground that you didn't know was there, and it bounces off and it hits somebody. You don't know, do you? Don't be shooting off warning shots. Don't be producing a firearm into a situation to solve an argument or to intimidate. Deploy them in a way that preserves your life, your liberty, your loved ones. Don't be popping off warning shots. Such an idiotic idea to me. It just always has been. Another question was a lot about the caliber debate, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit because it confuses a lot of newer people, because if you're newer to the gun gun hobby, or to the self defense or the tactical stuff, and you don't know nothing about calibers, you've probably seen a lot of talk about it, and you probably also picked up a lot of bad opinions about it, because a lot of people, there are people out there that say, "Oh, the bigger the better," and must stop in power and stuff like that. I'm telling you right now that that's the kind of thing that you should ignore. You should research rounds that are, honestly, law enforcement is a good litmus test for a lot of stuff. Um, that's not to say they don't make mistakes, but they are a good litmus test for a lot of stuff. Like, there's a reason why 9x19 Parabellum is still the standard, the gold standard of defensive rounds. It's cheap, it's widely available, the firearms are affordable, they're easier to reload if you want to reload them. Um, hand reloading uh, cartridges. Um, they're plentiful. You're not going to go broke shooting them. And, if you end up finding a better 9mm one day and you want to get rid of the one you have now, it's pretty easy to resell a 9mm. I have nothing against 40 cal, 40 Smith & Wesson. I really don't. But, it's more expensive. I have a lot of buddies, because I never bought one. My dad owns one. I have a lot of buddies that have one. Dad, you're not going to change his mind one way or the other. But my buddies, they regret it, because they wanted to resell them, and they're really hard to resell because nobody wants them. Because you're talking about, it is a snappier round, because it's a 10mm short, is what it is. And it was born about from the infamous 1986 Miami-Dade shootout. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit. The it is an intrinsically more costly round to shoot, and I mean, you got your shields that are chambered in it, which shields are chambered in just about every round you can imagine. Same with Glock, but I just never been a big fan of 40. Again, I don't have nothing against it. It's just that, man, and they're kind of, most of the guns are kind of chunkier too, because it is a bigger round to some degree. Not much bigger, but it is bigger. So there's that. And then when you're talking about revolvers, like, you'll hear like the 38 and and this, that, and everything else. So I'm going to tell you, first and foremost, most experienced shooters, especially more tactical related guys, like the tactical crowd, rely on the lowest caliber with the most amount of oomph behind it. 9mm is that round. 380 is kind of skirting the threshold. 380 is certainly deadly. You can kill somebody with it. There have been plenty of people killed with it. But it can be an anemic round. It depends on the manufacturer. Like, you have to research it. Whereas 9x19mm is, like, no matter who the manufacturer is, generally speaking, it's going to have what you need to put down the problem. And if you're talking about revolver loads, 38 special. 357 Magnum has a lot of oomph behind it. I did competition shooting with 357 Magnum. But, you're talking about a round that has a lot of recoil behind it. Well, not that much recoil, but, it does have a substantial amount of recoil behind it. And a lot of people, especially newer shooters, they end up anticipating that first shot because of what they know the potential for that firearm is in terms of that round. So they end up, I see it because I see it all the time. This is actually how I placed a lot of the times, is because a lot of guys would just, like, they would sign up and, they'd want to shoot a 357 Magnum, and they just kind of anticipate that first shot, and they always dip because they're basically, they're just trying to get the trigger squeeze done and over with. Because, most of the shooting I did was primarily centered around double action shooting, which is why I recommend for a revolver. Don't do single action. I'll explain that in a bit. But by and large, the bare minimum threshold 9mm 38 special. So 9mm, a bunch of those guns come in different shapes and sizes. Um, I myself carry a full size one. So showing clear, this firearm is safe. Nothing in the mag well. Ammunition has been put and stored away for the sake of this video, for the sake of this demonstration, so that there is no temptation at all to load around. This gun is absolutely harmless. It is totally safe. So like I understand that I'm being a little bit about like where it's pointed, but again, like there's no risk involved. This thing is not going to magically kill somebody. So with that being said, so this is not your typical 9mm. This is, as you can probably tell, this is suppressor ready. It's got suppressor ready sights on it. It's got night sights on it. This is a double single, and yeah, so like it's got the hammer on it. So the thing I like about it is, like, especially as a concealed carrier that carries up front in the appendix carry position, is that I can tell if my clothing is getting in the way, because I put my thumb, as I'm reholstering, I put my thumb on my hammer. So let's just say I'm guiding it down into my holster. Let's just say my shirt is, we'll call this my shirt, and it's getting in the way. And I'm coming up, I feel that hammer coming up. That means I need to back off. So I'll be backing off. Now this also has a decocker. Now this particular model comes with an option to like kind of have a safety switch, kind of like a 1911 has. I don't like thumb switches, thumb safety. So like, because the way I see it, your trigger finger should be the safety. But by and large, and like, you can't really go wrong with it at all. It's a good firearm. These not so common to find. They're not available in every gun shop. This particular one, the CZ P07, the P10 magazines fit it. So that's good, because I haven't been able to find P07 magazines in quite some time. But there are plenty of P10 magazines out there on the market. So it's the same magazine. So, which is good. I'm glad about that. But yeah, this is my everyday carry 9mm. It's got a talonized grip. I got the rubber on it. So this is my everyday carry gun. I have a special cut custom holster that I carry this in for appendix carry, so that it's more comfortable. It tucks it closer to my body, and of course I can still have my light on it. So of course, one of the biggest advantages to having a 9mm is typically, carrying capacity. This one comes out of the box with two 15-round magazines. So capacity is not an issue. And I do have a mag carrier for the spare mag, and I also number my magazines. So like, I'm in good shape when it comes to like having options, having something that I can defend my family with, defend my house with, defend myself with. So, but let's say you live in a California compliant state or something similar, and you're not allowed to have this. Well, typically speaking, a lot of people end up in those states choosing revolvers, because when carrying capacity is an issue, horsepower behind the round is something to consider. While there's a lot of myths with must stop and power, generally speaking, when you're talking about the amount of gunpowder behind a round, typically you're talking about revolver loads. And so that's when you talk about things like 357. But let's say you're concealed carrying, and the problem is that a lot of full-size revolvers, with the exception of like the Chiappa Rhino, don't exactly lend themselves well to concealed carry, because they're very round in design. So a lot of people end up choosing what this is. This is, and again, clear, showing clear. The cylinder is open. This gun, again, safe. Nothing's going to happen. This is an air weight. This is shoot, I can't remember the model. 642. This is Smith & Wesson 642 air weight. And this particular model is double action only. With the 9mm, it's a double single. First trigger pull is double action, just to kind of show you. So, again, safe. Decock. So, the first trigger pull, typically on this, is double action. And then as the slide comes back and it resets, the next will be single, and then when you're done, you just decock it. With this is a little different because the hammer is internal. There is no external hammer. So, as you can see, now there are certain models that have like a shrouded hammer, kind of looks like a switch. I do not like having a very... See, this hammer is not such a big deal on my 9mm because it's very low profile. I hate high profile hammers. And so even when I was competition shooting, whatever revolver I had, I bobbed the hammer off. I absolutely cannot stand the stirrup of a hammer because it would snag on everything. And I think it's a bad practice to be single action shooting all the time. It's one thing when it's coming out of a semi-automatic pistol. That's one thing, because a lot of semi-automatics have ways to render the firearm in a safer status, like back to double action, such as a decocker or a hammer drop. With revolvers that have single action and double action, a lot of negligent discharges happen because of single action revolver. Investigating and bumping the knot, they pull their hammer back, and then they flag half the world, and something goes bump, they get scared, pop, because that trigger pull is much, much less. With with a lot of, it was a big problem with a lot of law enforcement back in the day. And then a lot of people would pull the hammer back and then decide, oh, they don't need a fire. And they try to let the hammer down. That hammer slips out of their thumb and then poof, plug around through the floor or the wall, if you're lucky, if nobody is in the way. So, of course, the thing I like about this is that this is probably one of the safest firearms you can have in terms of that kind of thing being an issue, because like I said, everything is a double action trigger pull. So you pull the trigger and like there's a little, I mean you can't really see it from your vantage point, but there is a little firing pin that comes out. That clicking you're hearing too, I'll explain that here in a minute, but the problem with a lot of revolvers is because their carrying capacity. This one is 5-shot. And the thing is, this is rated for 38 plus P. I've never shot 38 plus P in it. I've only ever shot normal stock 38 special in it. And the thing is, with a barrel this size, 38 is kind of poppy out of it. And I highly, if you find one that's rated for 357 Magnum, please don't shoot 357 Magnum in it. I mean, doggone. It's not impossible, but man, it's going to be really hard to learn how to shoot on that thing. Because you're already working with something that's not got the best sights in the world anyway. Because typically a lot of them have these gutter sights. Like you just kind of line it up and go. The thing is too that I absolutely hate the stock grips that come on these things. So this one is replaced. This is a Packmeyer. And what this is, and because I'm wearing a dark shirt, I'll try to put this in my right around my skin color. There's a switch right here, so that whenever I'm getting a full purchase out of my holster, my middle finger will hit that switch, and then I have a pinky extender, so that I have a full purchase on that thing. And so whenever I decide I'm going to shoot, like I've got everything ready. Like I've full purchase everything. I can line up my side picture really good and then pop one off. But yeah, like if you're going to do that, like at least get like a because it's not hard to change out the grips, just as long as you get it flush with the back strap. So you're probably gonna have like this little opening here because that's just the mechanism of the thing because there is a spring here, but they're generally easy to put on. These things are easy to clean. I mean, they're probably the easiest guns I've ever had to clean because everything is so internalized. I do take the faceplate off occasionally, but and for those of you that are looking for more safety on this thing, I hate it, but you have a Hillary, what we call a Hillary key, where you take like this little key lock and you turn it. I've never used it. I've never known anybody to use it. It's a useless feature, but it's something that like the Clintons wanted to come up with, and da 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 da. So there you go. Speaking of safeties, so anyway, so these are my everyday carries. Like I said, if you think this is too big, there are smaller options. This is probably the best option you can get in terms of concealed carry with a revolver. So again, I'm going to put everything back on the table. I'm just going to lock the slide open on this. Well, there we go. Sweaty palm. Actually, that was a little bit of oil from the revolver. I haven't oiled that thing in like 2 years, and it's still oil. I haven't shot it in like 3. So still has the oil I put on it last time. So anyway, I want to talk about safeties real quick. So because somebody asked about it, like what options have safety. So obviously, like my stuff is double action stuff. Striker fire. I don't despise striker fire. I don't dislike striker fire. It's just that I came from the world of revolver competition shooting when it came to like handguns and being used to handguns. So I was used to the stiff trigger pull, and so I shoot better with that than I do striker fire because I'm used to that heavy first trigger pull. So I do highly recommend learning on a striker because like if you get used to that trigger pull, you'll be golden. Um, that being said, Glocks don't come with thumb safeties. Shields do. I just want you to. I hate 1911s because of that grip safety. Because if there's a struggle for it, and like you're just trying to, and you've got the purchase, but you're trying to get the perp off you, and he's jostling, and like the mechanism can fail. In addition, you already have a thumb safety. I'm just saying that if you're going to have a thumb safety on your gun, you should really evaluate why you want one. If it's for the sake of minimizing risk in terms of carrying in a holster, generally speaking, that problem can be fixed with like just having a quality holster. Um, like I mentioned with the double, with the hammer on my 9mm, I can tell if there's clothing getting in the way or whatever because I don't slam it home into my holster. I very carefully and concisely and consciously put it back into the holster. Um, and I'll feel it back in because I have practiced from draw and reholster positions. And so I'm just saying evaluate why you want a safety because even striker fire guns have like a safety control device that you can buy online for them to essentially do what I do, just with a striker fire pistol. But if you're wanting a safety for the sake of it's so I can leave it out and like I don't have to worry about my kids getting a hold of it. Well, you've admitted to me now that you're not responsible for enough to have kids or a gun. So you need to evaluate why you want that safety. Again, I'm not opposed to it, but I don't have thumb safeties aside from on my AR, and that's it. So, I mean, you really need to evaluate why you want a thumb safety. Now, somebody also mentioned like extra accessories. So strobe warning, I'll be warning about soon. So as you can see, I've got my this is a PL2 Valkyrie made by OLAP because I like to be part of the problem instead of the solution. So warning, this is bright. I'm not going to be aiming it at the camera, but I will try my best to like demonstrate the strobe effect. So if you're sensitive to strobe lights, that's going to be coming up here in a second. So I will let you know when to look away and when you can look back. My wife had a seizure from strobes before, so like I get it. So, anyways, for the brightness part, so please don't use this as a flashlight. Use it as a defense light. Something goes bump in the night, they're going to get a face full of that. I'm not even aiming it at the camera, right? So, holding it in and just letting go is what turns it on and off. But also, I can just press it one time and it stays on. But warning, strobe coming up. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. But this is what I use it for. Because if somebody's going, okay, you can look now. Because if somebody is going bump in the night, I'm going to blind them. And I hope they're epileptic because I've already done half the work. It would make my job easier. So you never know. You might have an epileptic thief. You don't know. So, and by the way, for those of you that think, oh, you care more about your things than other people's lives, look, if they're breaking into my house at night, they've already admitted that they care more about their things than their life too. So I mean, it's a two-way street there. Don't break into my house, there won't be no problems. So, anyways, yeah, that's pretty much just me wanting to talk about some of the options you have. What I would consider the bare minimum on caliber. Again, 9mm, proven round. Enjoyed many years of law enforcement use, still does. And when it comes to 38 special, it was the king before the 9mm. And you know, that's bare minimum for revolvers. In a 4-inch barrel, yeah, go ahead and go for 357 Magnum. But anything smaller than that, go for 38. And then, of course, I want to briefly touch on the Miami-Dade shootout of 1986 because this, and probably the 1970 Newhall shooting. These are scenarios that I consider almost essential reading for anybody that is considering defensive rounds, and whether it's talking about defending yourself against attackers or law enforcement or whatever. You know, if you're looking to get into law enforcement, because there's a lot of training scenarios about it. So, first and foremost, the Newhall shooting. I'm going to briefly touch on that because this does pertain to the revolver. So, at one point, so in 1970, California Highway Patrol were looking for a perpetrator that was going down the highway that was brandishing a firearm and menacing people on the highway. The thing about this scenario is that a lot of the details that was involved in that crime were left out. And so the officers that were responding were woefully unprepared. Once they made contact with the car in question, they then found out that they were making contact with not one but two suspects. And they were not jacking around. These were highly dangerous, highly volatile criminals that had proven their propensity for violence. And upon making contact, within 1 minute, 4 officers were killed. Now, these two perpetrators were later caught. One arrested, the other one, I believe, was killed or committed suicide. I can't remember. It's been a while since I read up on it. But one of the situations I want to talk about, and this pertains to those of you that are wanting to carry a revolver, is within that scenario, one of the officers that was killed had his service duty revolver. He gets down on the ground and assumes his firing stance, pops off 6 shots, opens his dump pouch, which was a mechanism for carrying ammunition back in the day, for those of you that are younger than 1999, and started loading the other 6. At this point, during this reload, he was shot and killed at point blank range. There's a lot of things about this scenario that are a little bit hazy. there's some myths surrounding it. For example, the officer supposedly dumped the empty brass upon whenever he was choosing to reload. He dumped the empty brass into his hand and pocketed it as a habit he had picked up on the range. However, there's a very good chance that that scenario never happened. But one of the takeaways from that shooting was that in police training, what they typically told this was still when revolvers were service duty pistols for the police force. You fire 6, dump the empties on the ground, and then open up your dump pouch and load in 2, drop the rest on the ground, and then fire the other 2. The takeaway from the Newhall shooting was that it was better to pop off your 6, load 2, and get back into the action quicker than it was to take the extra time to load up all 6. Now, we have certain mechanisms and devices now that probably help better with that. For example, when's the last time you've seen anybody carrying a dump pouch? It's been a long time for me. Most people I've seen either carried speed strips or, like myself, carried speed loaders, which was this device you pop it on the cylinder, kind of like this. You pop it on, you twist it, and then you kind of like a book, close it up, and there you go. It's ready. It's back in the fight. So there was a lot that was riding on, at first, the act of pocketing brass, because a lot of brass was a concern back then too. But it turns out that whole entire part of the account might have been fiction. Instead, the main takeaway was if you were going to carry a revolver, it's better to load up a couple of shots on the reload if you don't have any kind of faster mechanism in play and get back into the action than it is to take the time to load all 5 or 6 or however many your revolver holds. Now, there is also one more infamous case that happened in 1986 in Miami-Dade, Florida. It is, for those of you that probably already know, it is considered the bloodiest 5 minutes in the history of the FBI. It was the Miami-Dade shootout, in which 2 perpetrators, Platmatics, were knocking over armored trucks and banks and stealing money. And these guys had killed before. These guys were going to this rock quarry. They shot and killed one man, took his car, used it for the robberies, and then upon the idea that they were probably being tailed from that vehicle, tried to abandon it and tried to steal another car. Shot the man that was at that same rock quarry, because it turns out, if you're at a place that's locally used as a firing range, gunfire is no big deal. Shot him in the head, took his car, and then was looking for more banks to knock over. Except that man lived. He did not die and was able to identify Platmatics to the FBI. And so the FBI agents, upon making contact, started a felony traffic stop. In the next 4 minutes began the bloodiest fight the FBI ever saw, in which well over 100 rounds were fired, and the sad part is not a lot of them landed. Upon making contact, they were immediately greeted with a Ruger Mini 14 chambered in .223, and during that whole fight, there was so many shots, but very few of them actually landed. Many of them whiffed, and a lot of people take away from that either the superiority of semi-autos or the superiority of revolvers, when honestly that should not be the takeaway. The first takeaway for me has always been the bravery of the FBI agents that showed up that day, because it certainly wasn't in short supply, and they were mostly using handguns in a rifle fight. But number 2 is the marksmanship. You see, there was a lot of rounds fired, but only one that was potentially fatal, fired from a 9mm Smith & Wesson semi-automatic. It went through the Ruger Mini 14 guys, I can't remember which one it was. I want to say Maddox, but I'm not sure. But it went through his bicep, severed the brachial artery, entered the thoracic, perforated the lung, and stopped just short of his heart. A certainly fatal shot, but it was not an immediately incapacitating one. And a lot of what the FBI took away that day is how dead is dead. Because it was a fatal shot, and a lot of experts say that had the fighting would have continued on for just a couple more minutes, or even if Maddox escaped, the one that was shot through the lung would have been dead within a minute or two after the fighting was done anyway. Well, that certainly didn't help the FBI agents that were being shot, and the two that were killed, Dove and Grogan, who were both killed that day trying to engage the criminals. By the end of it, a lot of people took away this. I often call something like this a backup gun. Those were deployed. You will hear a lot of people talk about training one-handed. That certainly happened. Ed Morales was the man who shot a shotgun one-handed, had to pump the action one-handed, and try to attempt to stop because he had been shot in the arm so bad that he thought his forearm was going to have to be amputated when the fight was over. And indeed, he didn't know if he was going to make it or not. He was able to keep his arm. So that is the happy ending on that end. The thing is, rounds like .357 Magnum are certainly powerful, but they're virtually useless unless you're hitting what you're shooting at. And the thing is, the main thing the FBI took away is to issue 10 millimeter. And when that didn't plan out because a lot of people weren't hitting the marksmanship requirements with 10 millimeter, they came up with the 40 Smith & Wesson round, the 40 cal, that a lot of people talk about and still carry today. That round was born out of the 1986 Miami-Dade shootout. And a lot of people carry it because of that. And it's hard to believe that that's the main takeaway for people. As what should have been the takeaway is that marksman. Now, it's easy to sit here in my comfortable chair and talk about marksmanship. Nobody's shooting back at me. Nobody's flinging rounds in my direction. It's just a crazy thing that so many shots were whiffed, and a lot of the action that happened that day. I mean, the suspects were certainly hit, but none of them really had any kind of lethal shots. Meanwhile, as the fighting grew longer and longer, 2 FBI agents would be killed in the line of duty by the time it was over, and before the perpetrators were even stopped. They were stopped by Ed Morales after he had expended all of his shotgun shells, and he got up and took his personal .357 Magnum revolver chambered with 38 plus P rounds, advanced upon the car that they were trying to escape in, and shot them both and killed them both, and one of them at point blank range. Marksmanship was definitely in a little bit of a short supply that day. And so it's one of those things that we should, whatever caliber you choose to shoot, because I've talked to you about how I really think that you should choose things like 9mm, 38 special, that kind of thing. Things that are kind of on the lower end in terms of recoil, but have enough behind them to really do damage to a target. Because the thing is, I firmly believe if more of those 9mm rounds, and in fact the angle was kind of odd. If it would have been a center mass hit, it would have been, I think it would have ended the fight, or at least had a better chance of ending the fight. Problem is the round went through the arm, into the thoracic, basically coming through the side. Stopped just short. If it would have been straight on, it certainly would have ended the fight. Even if it was just a lung shot, I think it would have been done a lot more damage. But that being said, marksmanship is key. And you want something that you can handle. And so that's one of the reasons why I suggest these, the bare minimum, lower on the tier kind of rounds. Because while certainly .357 and 45 ACP and 40 Smith and Wesson and 10 millimeters. They certainly have that oomph, but they're virtually useless if you don't hit what you're aiming at. And so you should choose around. Don't let people talk you into handling. You have to have the biggest round possible, or you have to have the most stopping power, the must stopping power kind of crowd. You need to instead take a serious look at things. You need to be honest with yourself about what you can handle. Now, I also want to, before I close this out, specifically refer to this a lot, and I'm specifically going to be referencing any women that are watching this. You will have a lot of gun store owners try to gear you into something like this because it's tiny, it's little, it's cute. You can throw it in a purse, you can throw it in your pocket. It goes good with your lipstick and stuff like that. This is not a good choice for a first-time shooter. It's not a good choice for a first-time concealed carrier unless you're already used to something like this. I'm certainly of the opinion that if you chose this and this was your only option and you practice with it all the time, you could certainly get good enough to be quite the formidable force behind the trigger. That being said, it's poppy. The size of the barrel makes it kind of jump a little bit. It's a little bit harder to aim. You don't have quite the full sight picture that you would have now. Honestly, a little bit of nail polish, for like orange or something, up here on the front sight would probably help it. But it still doesn't fix the overall problem that this is very much more of a short range, what I call a get the hell off me gun. This is something that somebody runs up on you and you stick in their side and then you start pulling the trigger so that they get off of you. Now, can you hit a target at 7 yards? Certainly, you can hit somebody 30 yards out with this. That being said, that the more the distance, the harder it is already with a normal full-size gun. It's magnified times 10 with a gun this size. So, husbands, don't let the gun store owners talk you into buying something like this for your wife or your girlfriend because it looks little and it'll fit their girly little hands. And women, don't be, because the thing is that this particular model, now mine came with a black grip, but this is how I know that this is more geared towards women's carry, throwing it in your purse, throwing it in your backpack, because this same model you can get with a pink grip. That's how I know that they are gearing this towards women and women's concealed carry. I'm telling you right now, this is what I call my underwear gun. I can throw in a pair of boxer shorts or basketball shorts, go down to the gas station real quick. It's not something I would seriously consider whenever I'm going out or going to church or whatever in terms of personal protection. But it is something that, look, it's hard to surround a man with a barking 38 in his hand. So, and 5 shots are better than none. That being said, it's something that I only throw on me when I'm going out real quick to go grab something and then come back. It's not something that I'm expecting to get into a shootout with. I understand that shootout, you're not expecting a shootout. That being said, this is something that I'm just going to throw in there because like it's just super easy to throw in my waistband and that's it. But that being said, I know a lot more women that carry something like this than something like this. Like I said, practice makes perfect. But something like this is actually easier to shoot and does actually fit your hand better. No pinky extension, nothing. All you have to do is practice your grip, practice your aim, practice your side picture, and you too can become a formidable force. You don't need a tiny little girly gun. Okay? So don't let anybody talk you into it otherwise. That needs a little oil. That slide's getting a little rough. With that all being said, I hope that's answered the majority of your questions. Because I'm hoping to get back into role-playing game stuff soon. I do appreciate a lot of the comments and a lot of the new subscribers. And I'm not planning on the gun stuff, the firearm stuff going away totally. It's just that that's not what my channel is really built around. That being said, I'm glad it's been well received. And again, yeah, I plan on talking about stuff like this very soon. It's just that that's not what gets engagement from my audience. But I appreciate it nonetheless. And if that's what, like I said, there's an audience that is engaging with it, so I will um, try to appease them as well. So, with all things being said, as always, guys, take care. God bless, and I'll see you on the other side. A little indigestion there.